Welcome to an introduction of JavaScript. So what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a scripting or programming language that allows you to implement complex features and web pages. Every time a web page does more than just sit there and display static information for you to look at. It is programming language for the web. It can update and change both HTML and CSS. It can also calculate, manipulate, and validate data.
So it is a useful website since it is an interactive programming language that is convenient to users. So common examples of a JavaScript that can be used daily includes the search box on an Amazon or refreshing your Twitter feed.
Incorporating JavaScript improves the user experience of the web page by converting it from a static page into an interactive one. In short, JavaScript adds behavior to web pages.
The name JavaScript came from the Netscape support of Java applets within its browser. Applets are those small applications that are written in Java programming language.
The year 2005 proved to be a big one for JavaScript. A paper released by Jesse James Garrett introduced Ajax, a revolutionary suite of technologies that include JavaScript. Ajax vastly improved user experience by allowing web pages to feel more like native desktop apps. This really pushed JavaScript into the spotlight as a professional programming language.
Many people tell us that it was also a marketing tactic to divert some attention from Java, and became a buzzing topic on that time.
To run Java programs, the code must be first compiled into an executable form. So now let us proceed to the brief history of JavaScript. Brendan Eich. According to research, Brendan Eich is an American technologist and creator of the JavaScript programming language. He co-founded the Mozilla Project, the Mozilla Foundation, and the Mozilla Corporation, and served as the Mozilla Corporation's Chief Technical Officer and briefly as its Chief Executive Officer. He is the CEO of Brave Software. In the late 1995, when Microsoft caught on to the competitive threat, the web host, the Internet Explorer project was started in all-out attempt to wrestle control of the emerging platform from Netscape.
The advantages of JavaScript. First, less server interaction. You can validate user input before sending the page off to the server. This saves server traffic, which means less load on your server. Second, immediate feedback to the visitors. They don't have to wait for a page reload to see if they have forgotten to enter something. Third, increase interactivity. You can create interfaces that react when the user hovers over them with the mouse or activates them via the keyboard. And lastly, richer interfaces. You can use JavaScript to include such items as drag and drop components and sliders to give a rich interface to your site visitors. The limitations of JavaScript. First, client-side JavaScript does not allow the reading or writing of files. This has been kept for security reasons. Second, JavaScript cannot be used for networking applications because there is no such support available. And lastly, JavaScript does not have any multi-threading or multiprocessor capabilities. These are examples of JavaScript development tools. First example is the Microsoft front page. Microsoft has developed a popular HTML editor called FrontPage. FrontPage also provides web developers with a number of JavaScript tools to assist in the creation of interactive websites. The second example is the Macromedia Dreamweaver MX. Macromedia Dreamweaver MX is a very popular HTML and JavaScript editor in the professional web development crowd. It provides several hundred pre-built JavaScript components, integrates well with databases, and conforms to new standards such as XHTML and XML. The last example is a Macromedia Home Site 5. Home Site 5 is a well-liked HTML and JavaScript editor from Macromedia that can be used to manage personal websites effectively.
Okay, so let's head on to another discussion which is all about JavaScript as a side scripting language. Client-side scripting like JavaScript can be embedded into the page on the client's browser. This script will allow the client's browser to alleviate some of the burden on your web server when running a web application. In other words, you can make your web page more lively and interactive with the help of JavaScript. Well, that's aside from the fact that it's also being used widely in game and mobile application development. Interesting fact, there are many programmers who think that JavaScript and Java are the same. Well, in fact, they're not. Java is a very complex programming language, whereas JavaScript is only a scripting language, where its syntax of JavaScript is mostly influenced by the programming language C. Okay, so these are the tools that you need. To start with, you need a text editor to write your code. And what I mean is that you can choose between Notepad++, Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, Atom, or any other text editor that you're comfortable with. Now let's head on to variables. Now most of the time, a JavaScript application needs to work with information. And these are the variables that are used to store information. Now here we can see that our value hello is being assigned to our variable message. Now take note that in order to create a variable in JavaScript, we need to use the word, or I say keyword, let. Constants. To declare constants, or I say an unchanging variable, we need to use the word const instead of let. Now variables declared using const or constants are called constants. They cannot be reassigned, and an attempt to do so would only cause an error. Now let's get a little bit deeper. Moving on to data types. Data types are value in JavaScript that is always of a certain type. For example, a string or a number. First in our list is the data type number. Now we can see here that we are assigning an integer or a floating point to a variable. Now we also have to take note that there are many operations for numbers. We have multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and so on. Now besides regular numbers, there are so-called special numeric values which also belong to this data type. We have infinity and none. Infinity represents the mathematical infinity. It is a special value that's greater than any number. And then we have none. The none represents a computational error. It is a result of an incorrect or an undefined mathematical operation. Next on our list is the data type Big Int. Now this type was recently added to the language, that is to represent integers of arbitrary length. A big int value is created by appending n to the end of an integer. As we can see in our example right here, that the value that we are to assign in our variable are appended with letter n at the end of it. Now we have string. This data type in JavaScript must be surrounded by quotes. Take note that double and single quotes are simple quotes, meaning that there's no actual difference between them. That we have to take note that this backticks right here are the ones that with extended functionality quotes, meaning that they allow us to embed variables and expressions into a string by wrapping them. Next we have the null value. Now this special null value does not belong to any of the types described above. It only forms a separate type of its own which contains only the null value, as we can see in our example here that our variable age has been assigned with a null value. You know what, in JavaScript, null is not actually a reference to a non-existing object or a null pointer like in some other language. Well, that's for your information, I guess. Okay, next we have Boolean or the logical type. Now we all know that Boolean type has only two values. true and false, and then this type is commonly used to store yes and no value, and that true means yes, it's correct, and false means no, it's not. Objects and symbols. Now the object type is special because all other types are called because there are values that can contain only a single thing, be it a string or a number or whatever. But in contrast, objects are used to store collections of data and more complexities. And then the symbol type is used to create unique identifiers for objects. Okay, so to wrap my discussion up, we learned that there are 8 basic data types in JavaScript. We have number for numbers of any kind. We have big int for integer numbers of arbitrary length. We have string, which are 4 strings. We have boolean type, that is for true and false. We have null for unknown values. We have undefined for unassigned values. We have objects for more complex data structures. Then we have symbol for unique identifiers. So let's also not forget that we have the type of operator. This operator allows us to see which type is stored in a variable.
Hello, I'm Samuel Manginsay, and my topic is all about JavaScript comments and JavaScript operators. So, what is JavaScript comments? JavaScript comments can be used to explain the JavaScript code and to make more readable. JavaScript comments can also used to prevent execution when testing alternative code. So, I have 2 examples of JavaScript comments, single line comments and multi-line comments. So first, sa single line comments mo. Single line comments start with the symbol. So dili ni siya ma-execute guys kay basta mabutangan siya ani nga symbol mo ni siya ang pasabot sa single line comments pag mabutangan siya og before ani nga symbol and with ends with the symbol kay dili na siya ma-execute pero katong gawas sa nabutangan og symbol ma-execute gyapon to siya. Tuwa ni siyang ikuan na atong iran. So ma-execute gyapon siya kay pero kani dili na siya ma-execute ang sulod sa symbol. Itong iran. The total is 7. Muamoran gyapon siya kay ang variable sa x is 5 and then 5 siya then plus 2 mo din to siya ma-execute mo tawagon din siya sa kuan ang y is mo ang variable sa y mo to siya ang total. So next is the multi-line comments. Multi-line comments starts with kani mura gyapon siya og kuan pero ang naka-difference lang sa iya ang symbol dili siya ma-execute gyapon ay ang nakalahian na sa iya kay naa siya before siya sa imong decode magbutang kadaan and it ends with the code. And next is operators, JavaScript operators. So my example of JavaScript operators is this: the variable x will assign 5. Ang naka-assign sa variable sa x is 5. Ang variable y is na-assign sa variable y is 2. So calculate dayon ang variable, i-calculate dayon niya ang x og ang y mo ang makabutang sa z, mo ang total sa z, then mo rin siya mura ra gyapon sa single line nga akong example. And then next is assignment operator. So like mo siya mo assign siya nara siya ang variable Then ang assign niya nga operator is ang mo ni siya ang 10. Itong i-execute. Ang ang yang kuan tot ay yang output is 10. So wala na siya. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Vincent John Mardiovero. I'm discussing about JavaScript values, objects, and variables. JavaScript values. JavaScript values are the values that comprise values like booleans, strings, arrays, numbers, and etc. So here is the example. Variable x has the value of 5, variable y has the value of 6. There is another example demonstration. As you have seen, there is the variable name called loan has the value of 500. Also below to it has variable number of months is equal to 3, which is the value. Then the total payment is loan times number of months. And we have the statement document that get that element by id value is we get it here. Then that inner HTML, the total payment is plus the total payment, which is we get it here. Then we have the result. This is the output of the code on the demonstration. JavaScript Objects is a collection of properties, and a property is an association between a name or a key and a value. A property can be a function, in which case the property is known as a method. So here is the example. A class person. A person is the object, and the name, first name, last name, age, gender, interest are the properties of a person's object. So here is another example. As you can see, there is a variable, then person object, then is equal to the first name, last name, age, nationality, which is the properties of the person. Then we have this my name is the person's plus person's first name, the person, then the first name, then person plus person that last name, which is we get at the person on and last name. The person's age is the person age, then person that nationality is person that nationality. Then here is the output of the code. JavaScript Variables. A variable means anything that can vary. JavaScript includes variables which hold the data value and it can be changed anytime. Example, variable, then variable name, semicolon, variable name is equal to value. So another example is we have this variable, then the variable name car is equal to the text string Toyota, then variable name color, then the text string green. So we have this the brand of the car plus the variable car, then and the color is the variable color. Then here is the output of the code.
As I continue the JavaScript syntax, let's talk about identifiers. Identifiers are names. In JavaScript, identifiers are used to name variables in keywords and functions and labels. The rules of legal names are much the same in most programming language. In JavaScript, the first character must be a letter or underscore, or it may be a $sign. So, here are my example of identifiers. So, I have the $name and the age. So, let's try to pop up these identifiers. Oh, so pwede siya. Pwede ta mag-use og underscore sa identifiers. Let's try kung pwede ba. Yes, pwede kayo siya. So, the only thing nga dili nato pwede gamiton sa identifiers is maguna ang number. Dili siya pwede. If iuna nato ang number. So, dili siya pwede gid. So, JavaScript is also case sensitive. So, let's try if case sensitive ba siya. So, itong i-print ang small sa name, n sa name, and kining big letter sa name. Kung pwede ba. So, dili gid siya pwede. And the next is most of us uses a long two words in our identifiers. So if we use two names like this, first name and last name. So that's is the example of how to use or to join the multiple words into one variable name. Like MasterCard or Intercity, in joining two words in variable, the rules of this is we do not use the hyphen because gamiton lang na siya sa mga subtractions. If we use this and print the last name with a hyphen, so dili siya pwede kung mag-use ta. Pwede ra underscore basta dili pwede ang hyphen. underscore. So here it is. Pwede na siya. So in history of programmers, pwede kita mag-join use by the upper camel case kung big ba yung F or ang N or small ang first word, dayon ang second words, ang first letter niya is dako. It depends on you kung on how to you join. Basta kay bawal lang hyphen. So JavaScript also use character set. JavaScript uses the character the Unicode covers almost all characters, punctuations, and symbols in the world. So I have example of a character set. So I have I will want to put my character inside the char set identifier. So let's try to pop up my character set. So inside the B are we are in D or there the character there is O with E slash inside. So that's the example of character set. So I have another example of character set. So let char set char set 2. In my second example, I will print this or alert to pop up. So here's another example of a character set. It's anything. Symbols, punctuation, characters, anything you can that JavaScript syntax have. That's all. Thank you.